Greetings, my friends. This is Celeria Rosencroix, and on this episode of the Chronological Quran, episode 20, we shall bring Surah 74 to a close. Anyway, before we begin, I would like to add an apology. Unfortunately, I do not yet have my tags prepared on this segment of commentary, and as such you will not be able to see them whilst watching the video. Hopefully I will have actually updated the tafsir by the time that it is published. That is, the video is published, not the tafsir itself. Obviously, that is available whenever you want to look at it. That having been said, let us begin. We shall start with Ayah 38, which reads, "Every soul will be detained for what it has done. Each one is a hostage to one's deeds, except the people of the right, the companions of the right hand, who shall be in gardens and shall ask concerning the guilty, the sinners, the mujrimun. What put you into Sakar? What drove you to hell? What hath brought you to this burning?" So, regardless of the fact that this renders horribly into English and makes the Quran seem as if it is babbling incoherently, let me get this straight. The companions or people of the right, whoever they are, for the text hasn't even mentioned them up to this point, are to be spared of any consequences of their actions other than the reward they will have earned due to their upstanding behavior. Yet they will be ignorant of what everyone else has done to get them to receive punishment, meaning they don't even know why they escaped it. Or are they just sick pieces of work who spend their time in their gardens of delight mocking those who went to hell, because they think that it is good and righteous to be mocking those who failed to reach whatever as yet undefined standard allowed them to make it? On the other hand, maybe it's just that I cut this off at an awkward moment, and this will all make much more sense once we are a few more ayah in. But as things stand, this feels very incoherent, and not very convincing as far as arguments to convert to other religions are concerned. Now we shall continue on to Ayah 43. "And then they, the al-Mujrimun, will reply, 'We were not amongst those who observed prayer, and we did not feed the poor. We used to indulge in vain talk with those who engaged in it, and to deny the day of judgment until the inevitable came to us.' So no mediation from any intercessor will avail them." By this point it does make it clear what is going on. While it still presents the upstanding Muslims as idiots, it is clear that these people are just actually being used as mannequins in an unnaturally written scenario for the sake of making a polemical point. Rather than there ever being any believers who might ask such things, it ought to be taken as the equivalent of Muhammad saying, "And how can you escape from the fires of hell I just talked to you about? Just avoid these horrible faults, or else no one will be able to save you. Don't avoid praying or giving charity. Don't you dare gossip, and never ever deny that Allah is going to judge the world at the end of time. If you fail in any of these fundamental ways, you will truly be boned. And I don't mean in a fun way, if you know what I mean." A rather crude argument, but it makes sense coming on the heels of what was presented before. With this, it feels like you have the first real sales pitch that is being presented for Islam. It's not just decrying the state of the world and denouncing evil anymore, but truly trying to win converts as of this moment. Now, we will continue on to the next ayah, Ayah 49, which reads, "Now what is the matter with people that they are turning away from this exhortation and admonition, as if they were frightened asses, fleeing from a lion? In fact, each one of them wishes to be given a personal letter from Allah for all to read. But no! The truth is they have no fear of the hereafter. No, indeed. This is a reminder and an admonition, so let whoever wills be mindful of it. But they will not benefit from it unless Allah Himself so wills. He is worthy to be feared, and He is worthy to forgive. He is the fount of fear. He is the fount of mercy. So, there seem to be multiple things that are going on here. Firstly, it seems people are complaining that Muhammad doesn't have anything written to hand out to anyone. And Muhammad takes the opportunity to suggest that they should not be doubting that Allah can bolster their memory, and have them take heed of these words if He so wills it. There could be multiple reasons for this. Firstly, Muhammad was very early into his career and may well simply not have had a scribe to help him write out the Quran physically, which would be necessary because even if he could remember it perfectly himself, it is traditionally held that Muhammad could not write, and thus would be incapable of offering such written materials while working alone. Secondly, Muhammad is clearly establishing himself as instrumental to the faith's promulgation, by denying that it is right that others should wish to receive any more revelation from Allah than is possible via hearing that deity's words from Him. Thirdly, he is accusing any that would want to actually read such material of having ulterior motives. Doubting Allah's word as being faithfully delivered by His Prophet is directly connected with doubting that Allah would burn them in hellfire for their wicked ways. In so doing, he reinforces the accusation that he laid out earlier. By actually hesitating and trying to think things through, these people are instead acting by instinct, running away from the truth like wild beasts, because they supposedly don't want to listen and accept the truth. Intellectuals who would prefer to study and properly dig into His words, and who are actually humoring Him and saying that they would like to look into the book He is supposedly receiving from Allah, are therefore being turned away and castigated for their supposed cowardice. Meanwhile, if we take it as being the case that Muhammad had any sort of personal input in these words, even if it is just that he's adding clarification and responding to crowds, it very much seems like a situation where he might have been motivated to make an excuse for the fact that he was illiterate and had no material to give, turning them away out of embarrassment. This shaming of seemingly honest inquiry does not bode well for the religion's ethos in general. That said, to be fair, I could potentially be reading this incorrectly, and it could instead be the case that he was simply being heckled, with someone saying, "Why can't I receive the personal writings of Allah and spread them about? What makes you so special?" Or something to that effect. If that is correct, then Muhammad is in turn correct to say that the person is probably, in fact, not fearful of his religion's deity and the supposed tortures of the afterlife that Allah would inflict upon him. I still lean towards the first hypothesis I have presented, but I must be intellectually honest and present both possibilities, for they seem to be equally valid. Now, there is one last matter here. One could potentially interpret the line about remembering and making use of what one hears being something that Allah could ensure as something more strong than what that reading of the text would imply. Maududi certainly does so, suggesting, as is the common Islamic understanding in general, as far as I understand it, that a person taking heed does not wholly depend upon his own will, but he takes heed only when Allah also wills to grant him the grace to take heed. In other words, no act of man takes concrete shape solely by man's own will, but each act is implemented only when the will of God combines with the will of man. Obviously, this sort of deterministic outlook paints Allah in a terrible light, because despite the fact that he has the ability to choose to allow people to remember and take heed of his words as much as he would want to, he instead causes or allows people to go astray, and has the power to deny even those who would most fervently will good behavior and piety for themselves. In other words, this interpretation of the text would make Allah to be an absolutely sadistic, evil, irredeemable monster who no sane person ought to worship as a god. Yet Islam chooses to avow that this is in fact the case, and still demands fearful obedience and praise for him, saying, as written in Ayah 56 of this very surah, Allah alone is worthy to be feared and worthy to forgive. What a disgusting, pathetic farce. This has been Celeria Rosencreux, and I thank you for taking this trip with me through this surah and to its end. Next time on the Chronological Quran, we shall continue on to the next surah, which happens to be Surah 1, Al-Fatiha. Finally, we get to the first one. Hooray! Anyway, that is a very brief surah, yet one that contains a lot of commentary on it and a great deal of meditation from numerous Islamic scholars. As such, I should think it may take a little while to do the proper research to make that video actually do justice to the surah. I will try to actually complete Surah Al-Fatiha in a single video, but it may end up being one that is twice the length of my normal video, or even more. We shall see. That having been said, until my words next greet your ears, I bid you farewell, and may God bless you all.